Some wounds are visible. Others are buried deep where no one can see them. Sarah Mallister carried both. The noon sun beat down hard on the dusty main street of Cedar Ridge in the Arizona Territory. Heat waves rose from the dirt and made the crooked buildings look like they were bending under the weight of the afternoon heat. The street was nearly empty. Only a few people were outside, moving slow, careful, hiding from the heat as best they could. The stagecoach from Tucson rolled to a stop in front of the depot. The horses were tired, their coats dark with sweat. The driver, a weathered man named Jake, spat into the dirt and shouted for everyone to get out. A few passengers stepped down, stretching stiff legs and rubbing sore backs. But the moment one woman climbed out, the world around her seemed to stop. Heads turned. Conversation faded, even the heat felt heavier. She was not noticed because she was beautiful, though maybe once she had been. She was noticed because of the bruises. Her traveling dress was torn and stained. One sleeve hung loose at her shoulder. Purple, black, and yellow marks covered her arms and her face. A fresh cut sat above her cheekbone, still red. Her steps were slow and careful, like every movement hurt. Her name was Sarah Mallister. She held a small carpet bag with both hands, gripping it so tight her knuckles looked pale as bone. Her hazel eyes moved across the street, full of fear and exhaustion. She looked like someone who was used to pain and expected more of it. She had come all the way from Pennsylvania after answering a mail-order bride advertisement. The letters from William Thornton had been written with sweet promises. He wrote about a fine home, steady work, and a gentle heart. None of it had been true. When she arrived, Thornton had turned out to be a drunk, a gambler, and a bitter failure. He shouted that she was not as pretty as her photograph. His rage was fast and violent. She learned fear in minutes. The beating was brutal. The bruises told that story. This morning, he shoved her onto the stagecoach and told her to get far away before he changed his mind about letting her live. Now she stood in Cedar Ridge with only 12 cents. No family, no home, no future. A voice snapped the silence. "Well now," someone drawled from the depot porch, "look what the stage dragged in." 3 men stepped forward, their eyes sharp with interest that made Sarah's stomach twist. One man, thin with yellow teeth, looked her over like she was something to purchase. Another gave a low laugh. "Damaged goods," he muttered, "but still useful." The words cut deeper than any bruise. Sarah backed away until her spine touched the hot wood of the stagecoach. "Please," she whispered, her voice rough from crying and fear, "I do not want trouble." "Trouble?" the thin man said, stepping close. His breath smelled like whiskey and rot. "We are offering work. Town like this. Woman alone. You do what you're told to survive." Everyone understood what he meant. Sarah's breath caught. Her knees weakened. Her fingers dug harder into her bag. She had heard stories of women forced into lives they could never escape. She never thought she would face it herself. Then another voice cut through the heat. Deep, steady, controlled. The lady said she does not want trouble. The 3 men turned. Sarah looked too and saw him. A tall man stood in the dusty street, strong-built, weathered by sun and wind. His clothes were plain but neat. Canvas trousers, a faded blue shirt, boots worn at the heels. His hat shadowed his face, but his eyes were clear and cold. Gray eyes, calm and sharp like steel. A rancher. She knew it instantly. "This is not your concern, Coleman," the thin man snapped. "Maybe," the rancher replied. "But I am making it my concern now." "You looking to buy yourself a woman?" Another man jeered. Coleman didn't flinch, didn't blink. His hand rested near his gun, loose but ready. "I am looking," he said, voice even, "to finish my business in town. This woman is coming with me." He spoke the words not like a threat, not like ownership, but like he was stating a fact no one could argue. The men hesitated. Something shifted in their posture. The rancher's silence held more danger than shouting ever could. He turned his eyes on the thin man. "Tom," he said quietly, You have a wife and 3 daughters. You want to stand here and treat a beaten woman like she's livestock?" Tom swallowed and stepped back. Then the rancher looked at another man. "And Pete, your mother takes in washing. How would she feel knowing her son acts like a vulture?" Pete's face burned red. He turned away. The tension broke. The men walked off, none brave enough to keep arguing. When they were gone, the rancher finally looked at Sarah. Up close, she saw the lines around his eyes, the kind that came from years of weather and work. "Not anger," his voice softened. "You're coming with me." "Not a command, an offer. I cannot pay you," she whispered. "I have nothing left." Quote. He lifted her bag. "I did not ask for payment." Her throat tightened. "My ranch is 30 miles out," he said. "You will have a bed, food, and time to heal." He took a step forward, waited for her to choose. She did not move, so he said the only words she needed. "You are safe with me." Quote. Something fragile inside her, a small, forgotten piece, shifted. Hope. She stepped forward, and she followed him away from the life that tried to destroy her. Sometimes healing does not begin with comfort. Sometimes it begins with silence, safety, and someone who does not ask for anything in return. The wagon ride to Joe Coleman's ranch stretched across wide land and open sky. The desert rolled endlessly, dotted with sagebrush, mesquite, and red earth that seemed to glow under the settling sun. Sarah sat stiff beside him, holding her carpetbag on her lap like a shield. Each bump in the road sent pain shooting through her ribs. She fought to hide it. She had spent months learning silence, learning not to react, learning that showing pain only brought more. But beside her, Joe noticed everything without staring. "You hurt?" he asked quietly. Sarah hesitated, fear tightening her chest. She waited for the trap behind the question. "Yes," she finally whispered. Joe nodded once. "We will get you seen to when we reach the ranch." He did not offer pity. He did not offer questions. That alone felt strange. As the sun dipped low, they reached the ranch. It stood strong against the open land. A small adobe house, a steady barn, and a corral holding a few horses. Nothing fancy, just honest. When the wagon stopped, Joe climbed down and came around to her side. He didn't grab her arm or rush her. He simply waited until she was ready to move. Inside the house, everything was tidy and warm. A large fireplace, shelves of canned food, a rocking chair by the window, 2 bedrooms. The air smelled like cedar wood and faint tobacco. Joe set her bag down gently and filled a basin with warm water. "You should wash," he said. "Salve is in the small cabinet. It will help the bruises." Sarah looked around the room, overwhelmed by something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. "Joe," she whispered, her voice shaking, "why are you doing this? You do not know me." Joe paused with his back turned, his shoulders lifted slowly as he breathed. "Once," he said, "I found a horse half dead out in the range, starved, beaten, ready to give up." He turned to face her. "Everyone said, 'Leave her, let the coyotes take her.'" Sarah held her breath. "But I couldn't. I brought her home, fed her, let her rest. Took a long time, but she healed. Became the best horse I ever had." His voice lowered. "Some living things just need a place where no one hurts them." Sarah could not speak. Her throat burned with tears she refused to let fall in front of him. He pointed to the smaller bedroom. "That room is yours as long as you need it." Then he stepped outside, leaving her alone with silence that wasn't frightening. That night, she washed her bruises carefully. She found clean dresses folded in a cedar trunk. They belonged to someone who never wore them. When she hesitated to touch them, Joe's voice came from the doorway. "They were meant for someone," he said softly. "But she never made it here. They're yours now." Sarah swallowed. "Your wife?" "No," he replied, "a mail-order bride. She died of fever before she reached Arizona." Both stood quiet, 2 stories of loss hanging between them. Dinner was simple stew and bread. Sarah ate slow, savoring each warm bite. Joe did not talk much, but his silence was not heavy. It was patient, Later, he laid a blanket across the rocking chair. "You can sleep in the bed," he said, nodding toward the spare room. "Or here, whatever feels safe." Sarah chose the rocking chair. Small places felt safer than open ones. Joe nodded like he expected that answer. Before turning in, he said only one thing. "You are safe here. No one will touch you." For the first time in months, maybe years, Sarah slept without fear. Days passed. Her body healed slow, but her heart had forgotten how. Joe never asked questions, never stepped too close, never raised his voice. Each morning she woke to coffee on the stove and a note telling her where Joe would be working. As her bruises faded, she began to tidy the house, wash dishes, mend a shirt or curtain. Joe never commented, just noticed quietly. One morning, when she came into the kitchen, a jar of wild desert flowers sat in the center of the table. No note, no explanation, just something gentle, placed in a world that had not been gentle to her. By the third week, Sarah stood a little straighter. Her voice no longer shook when she spoke. She cooked breakfast. She watered the small garden. Joe never stopped her. "You do not need to work," he said one evening. Sarah folded a towel and set it down. "I know," she replied softly, "but I want to." Joe nodded, understanding written in the quiet way he looked at her. When summer came near, Joe told her she should ride with him into town for supplies. Her heart jumped. Fear crawled back into her chest. People will stare. "Maybe," Joe said, "but let them. They do not matter." So she dressed in her best calico dress and held her chin high. Inside the general store, a woman named Kate Morrison walked up to her and smiled warmly. "Welcome to Cedar Ridge," Kate said. "If you ever need anything, you come to me." It was kindness, real kindness, the kind Sarah did not know how to carry. But outside, trouble waited. Tom Briggs and two other men stood near the saloon. "Well," Tom sneered, "Coleman's charity case looks better cleaned up." Joe stepped forward. "Walk away." But Tom kept talking, louder now. "Heard she came west as a bride. Bought and returned like damaged goods." The words stabbed. Before Sarah could react, Joe moved so fast the air seemed to snap. In one motion, he grabbed Tom and slammed him against the saloon wall. Joe's forearm pressed against his throat. Not hard enough to crush, but enough to warn. "You will apologize to the lady," Joe said. Tom's face turned red. I didn't mean..." "Apologize." Tom's voice cracked. "I'm sorry, miss." Sarah stood still, hands shaking, but she lifted her chin. "Your apology is accepted." Joe released him. Tom stumbled away, red-faced and shaking. They rode home in silence until Sarah whispered, "I brought trouble to your doorstep." Joe shook his head. "That wasn't trouble, that was a man learning manners." She looked at him. "You scared me," she admitted quietly. Joe's voice softened. "I would never hurt you." "Not ever." Quote. Sarah's chest tightened, not from pain, but from something she had not felt in a long time. Trust. When they reached the ranch, she helped unload supplies. The sky burned orange as the sun dropped behind the hills. She took a breath. "Joe," she said, heart pounding, "I do not want to leave." Joe paused, then nodded once. "Good," he said. "The garden is just starting to grow." Sarah smiled. For the first time, it felt like she was not just surviving, she was living, she was home. Sometimes love does not arrive loudly. Sometimes it grows slow and quiet, like seeds in dry soil waiting for the right rain. That was how it happened between Sarah and Joe. Summer deepened across the Arizona land. The days were hot and long. Nights carried a soft, warm breeze that hummed through the open windows. Sarah worked in the small garden every morning, tending the plants she and Joe had planted together. The soil was stubborn and hard at first, but she learned how to water carefully and loosen the ground. She liked watching life grow where there had once been nothing. Joe noticed everything she did. He did not speak about it much, but sometimes, when he passed, His eyes warmed with quiet pride. Sarah found herself waiting for that look every day. One afternoon, while she hung laundry on the line, she heard hoofbeats. She turned and saw a rider approaching fast. Dust kicked up behind his horse. Her breath caught. For a moment, her body froze with an old fear she thought she had outrun. Joe stepped out of the barn, already tense. His hand rested near his pistol. The rider slowed and stopped near the fence. He was a sheriff by his badge and coat. "Afternoon, Coleman," he called. Joe didn't move closer. "What do you need, Sheriff?" The sheriff tipped his hat towards Sarah. "I need to speak to the lady." Sarah's heart pounded. Joe stepped forward, placing himself slightly between them. "Speak here," he said. The sheriff cleared his throat. "There's been word of a man named William Thornton. He filed a complaint saying his bride ran off with his money and belongings." Sarah shook her head fast, panic rising. "That is a lie," she whispered. The sheriff did not look cruel, only tired. "Miss, I need the truth. Did you take money from him?" "No," she said, voice breaking. "He beat me. He threw me onto the stagecoach. I left with only what I brought." Joe's jaw tightened. His gray eyes turned cold as stone. "She tells the truth," he said. "I saw her the day she arrived." The sheriff studied Joe, then Sarah. After a long pause, he nodded. "I figured as much. Thornton's reputation is rotten. You are safe here. I will write the report and close the matter." Relief washed over Sarah so fast her knees weakened. The sheriff tipped his hat again. "You take care now." When he rode off, Sarah stood still, trembling. Joe walked to her slowly. "You are all right," he said quietly. She tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, tears spilled down her cheeks, sharp and fast. She covered her face with both hands. Joe did not rush her. He only said, soft and steady, "Nobody is coming for you. Not now. Not ever." She stepped toward him, not thinking, only needing something solid. Joe hesitated, then opened his arms. Sarah fit against him like she had belonged there all along. For the first time, she let herself cry without fear. Everything she had carried, shame, fear, loneliness, finally broke free. Joe held her, steady and warm, letting her fall apart so she could rebuild. When her breathing finally steadied, she pulled back a little. "I am sorry," she whispered. Joe shook his head. "Never apologize for surviving." His voice was low and certain. "Anyone would have broken under what you lived through, but you did not. You came west. You kept going. That takes more strength than you know." Sarah looked at him through the blur of tears. "No one ever said that to me," she whispered. Joe gave a small, gentle smile. "They should have." From that day forward, something shifted between them. Their steps matched easier. Their conversations lingered longer. Their silences felt warmer. Weeks passed, and the garden flourished. Green leaves, small blossoms, hope growing from earth that once seemed barren. One evening, the sky burned a soft pink. Sarah stood outside with a basket full of vegetables she had grown. Joe walked toward her from the corral, dust clinging to his boots. He stopped near her, gaze steady. "You have changed this place," he said. Sarah tilted her head. "I only planted seeds." Joe shook his head. "You brought life back here, inside the house, inside me." Heat rose to Sarah's cheeks. "Joe," she whispered. He took a breath. "I need to ask you something." Her heart raced. "Do you plan on leaving someday?" Sarah blinked, stunned by how quickly the answer formed. "No," she said softly. "I do not want to leave. This is my home." Joe nodded slowly, as if that answer mattered more than anything he ever hoped to hear. "That being the case," he said, voice thick, "I would ask something more." Sarah set the basket down. "What is it?" Quote, Joe stepped closer, not demanding, not claiming, simply offering. "I would like the chance," he said gently, "to court you, properly, with respect, with time. Only if you want it." Sarah's heart swelled with something deep and warm. Once, she had been thrown aside like broken glass. Now someone wanted her carefully, fully, honestly. "Yes," she whispered, tears gathering again, not from pain, but from something she never expected to feel. "Yes, Joe, I would like that." Joe did not kiss her then. He only took her hand, lifted it gently, and pressed his lips to her knuckles with the softest touch. Respect, care, promise. Under the Arizona sunset, surrounded by land that had seen both hardship and healing, Sarah Mallister finally knew. She was no longer running from a life. She was building one, and she belonged, fully, fiercely, and safely, with the man who had looked at her bruises, her hurt, her broken past, and still said, "You're coming with me." Because he did not mean ownership. He meant home.